this computer. Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and our topic today is It's Better Late Than Never. Have you ever had anything happen that you wish you had acknowledged and helped celebrate, or anything that happened that you was reticent in making congratulations or acknowledging it? Or maybe there was just something that was said that needed to be taken back. That's what we're going to talk about today, is looking at the fact that whenever those situations happen, how that we can maybe do things differently. And an example is that whenever I worked with the water board here locally, one of the trustees had died. Well, whenever I was on the water board, he had died about 3 years previously. But every time we had a meeting, they brought up something that he said that had been beneficial for the whole water board. And then they also kept bringing up the fact that they regretted that they didn't do anything to celebrate his tenure. And so I spoke up and I said, well, matter of fact, while they continued to talk, I just wrote out a few little things that I suggested that we make a plaque, 2 of them, one to hang in the water board, the water office itself, and another one to give to the family. And that it said on there that even though time had passed, his efficacy had not, that his legacy still was there, and that we wanted to display it, give them a plaque and have a plaque at the water board. But we also would like to have a picture of him so we could put his picture right beside the plaque. And so then the board all agreed to that. And that week the manager had it made, and he and one of the trustees went to visit the family. And from then on, it was just like, it was so thankful. It was like there was a weight had been lifted, that appropriate and meaningful acknowledgement had been made. And so I strongly suggest that it's better late than never. And that how sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men are not always followed through, and that can result in guilt and shame and in, feeling weighted down. So I thought I'd share today some 10 things that I personally tested and verified. And if any of them work with you, then go for it. And my friend Sue we're going to be sharing. We're going to be talking back and forth a little bit. So I have some good friends that join us every week, and so I've asked one of them to participate weekly. So anyway, first thing is to distinguish between true guilt and a false guilt. True guilt is when you have broken a promise or caused another person harm or hurt or an offense of some kind. And in this guilt, that's something to kind of applaud, because it indicates a working consciousness. And as we heed that working consciousness and take correct measures, we can dispel it rather quickly. But then that false guilt is that nagging shame that you have not lived up to expectations, whether those expectations was of what you had of you, or what you think society has of you, or what that certain someone has expectation they have of you, or maybe dogma of some kind.
Right. I think the false guilt is the one I fall to more often, because I am conscientious of obligations and commitments I've made. And quite often I'm too hard on myself. After I go down the road, I realize there really wasn't that much to it. I had done what I needed to do. But at that instant, it seems to go there.
Right. And so you can attest to the fact that guilt indicates a hypersensitive emotion. Recognizes the inappropriate guilt and the need to dump it. And sometimes we can just dump it on our own, saying it wasn't that big a deal. But if it's weighty, then speak to the person about it. Well, point number 2 is to think it through. that if it continues to bother you, even on a rare occasion, it still is unsettled, still needs to be worked on. And it needs to be settled. Why? So we can move on, so we don't stay stuck. As we put our emotions aside and use sane, sensible, logical thinking, we can assess and evaluate how to relieve this thought, this guilt. And so we want to reconnect in a positive, proactive way, such as sending a handwriting note. I mean, have you received a handwritten note recently from anyone that really mattered? I know I have a friend that every once in a while sends me a card of some kind. And I'm telling you what, I have to give her a call every time she does. She just sent me this card thinking of you and sending love and saying special prayers for you. That's all it is. It's just a card. But anyway, how wonderful to get a handwritten card from someone or a note. Or maybe give a phone call and set a date for lunch. Something I'm wanting to talk with you about.
I agree. I have several friends that send handwritten notes, and so I try to be conscious of returning them at some points to them too, because I know how special it is to me to get something from them.
Right. And then also to challenge your excuses is why I'm not calling, why I'm not trying to correct this. Why are you not following through or correcting the behavior? Is it because you're fearful, lazy, unorganized, don't know how, in denial, disillusion? Kind of goes along with the self-evaluating. Is it a lack of self-discipline, or have you gotten to the point that you just don't care? But if we do truly believe that it's never too late, then it's never too late.
Right. We need to, I think these would be the times that you need to do these things so you can move on. That if you don't, then you're going to be stuck. Right.
And that we have more creative abilities to problem solve than we often give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
So point number 4 is to seek trusted counsel. To seek someone that you can really talk it through with, depending on the offense or depending on the issue that was not remembered. I know my neighbor, her son was killed in a work accident, and a friend of hers keeps a picture of her son on her piano just as a testimony to the fact that he's not forgotten. And that's just so wonderful, for her. She would talk about that frequently. But as we seek that trusted counsel, because some things are too heavy to handle on our own, and that would be to see if it does need to be acknowledged or spoken, into existence, and to go back and apologize, or if it's something that needs to be, just kind of let it go on its own. But I had an incest victim come to me and was needed to just get off the burden of having been abused. And the more we talked, letting her know that you really need to share that with someone so that you're not keeping all of that harm and hurt and thinking it's all my fault and everything in yourself, because if someone else is abusing you, it's not your fault. So anyway, she began to acknowledge it, and then I've even suggested that she share some of that with her family members, and she began to do that. And it was just such a healing for the whole family. Other family members acknowledged of having either been wounded themselves or of having suspicioned that it was going on in the family. And so even later on together, they confronted the perpetuator and sought legal justice, and those generational cover-ups were exposed. And there was a multitude of healing that took place because of that.
Right. I would think so, especially if somebody had suspected it and not had acted on it. Once they knew the fact, they would have some guilt of their own that they would need to deal with. with it throughout
Right.
that, as well as supporting the other person. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the giving and the receiving.
Hmm.
And the thing of it is that, you know, that to help to make up for errors or for lack, uh, sometimes we have to roil the waters to be a peacemaker. That peacemaking is not peace at all costs by ignoring the situation and trying to pacify everyone. That it's sometimes stirring up those waters so that what is there can come to the top so that it can be skimmed off. And in the incident I was talking about a while ago, not only did great healing come to many members of the family, but also to the repentant abuser.
Mm.
That sought for and found forgiveness.
Hmm. Right. Definitely.
And of course, in addressing those issues, that's better late than never. It's a good idea to keep in mind the steps 8 and 9 that's in the Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12-step program. That step 8 is to make a list of all the persons we have harmed and, you know, became willing to make amends to them. But also in that where we harmed them, or even if they harmed us, step 9 is to address it, except when doing so would injure them or others. Because sometimes an abuser is not willing to admit, and so it causes more harm than good. But relationships are always worth restoring, whether they are deep in bonding or whether it's just to the fact that of the acknowledging. I heard a story the other day that happened back several years ago, or many years ago. It was in New York, that there was a father and son that had a major blowout and the son left home. And the dad put a ad in the New York paper, just an ad. I mean, you know, who reads ads today? But in that particular time, he put the ad in there, and he put, to my son, all is forgiven. Meet me, and it gave a date and a street and a time at 9 o'clock. And so the dad was there the next day, just, you know, really excited that his son was going to show up, because he had said, you know, it's Dad, I want to see you. And on that particular day, there was hundreds or a multitude of people that had shown up because they was wanting to make amends with their dad.
Oh my.
Because, you know, son, I forgive you, forgive me. That's, you know, all is forgiven. Meet me at such and such a time.
Oh
And then they
my.
had to get the police out and everything. And the thing of it is we all want to be forgiven. And so whether we're the victim or the perpetrator, we always want to proceed with wisdom and caution and humility.
Right. It became a generic invitation without meaning it to be.
Right. Exactly.
Right. That's amazing that many people would want to respond back.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
rebuild
the person that was telling the story, supposed it was, you know, a true event, and they even had to get police out because, you know, to help calm and to help let know that this was an error. This was just son, come home.
Did the intended son appear?
Yes, he did, and it was settled.
Right. Or perhaps these sons will reach out to their fathers.
Right. And then point number 7 is to, in addressing the issue, give us just a very simple explanation. There's a huge difference in an excuse and an explanation. You know, this wounded me. I'm afraid that I wounded you because of an overlook or whatever. And that explanation accepts and clarifies an oversight, whereas an excuse is trying to cover up or showing irresponsibility. And then you know, like the dragnet fashion back when, just keep it short. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, sir.
Right. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. And 8 is to always be sincere. be sincere, be sincere, be sincere, that it's genuine, that you want that rift to be settled. You want the amends to be made. And I think back to the artisans back in ancient Greek that would make the statues, but there would be a little mischisel and a piece would fall out. And some of them would put wax in it. But the ones that were the more genuine, the more official ones, would stamp all of their statues sincerita, which means without wax. There's nothing there trying to cover it up. It's real and genuine. You're getting the flaws and all. And it's how we have talked about before, that all of us are flawed and fabulous. And be genuine and without a false humility. Don't gloss over your mistakes or your remorse or your shame or your embarrassment. Just accepting it, that responsibility right here. You know, I was wrong. I was late. I was whatever. But just go with grace and being sincere. And then I think a real important thing is to rest in the end results. That if you have made the effort, whether it was graciously received or not, just rest in the end result. That whatever the outcome, graciously receive the person's response with gratitude. And embrace that relationship and keep communication as healthy as possible, so that the next time you see them, you're not carrying that weight. And you can be open and gracious and kind. And if it wasn't received, and there is a brief time of grief that I waited too long, then again, move on. Move on, because holding on to those things just doesn't work. It doesn't make life flow. And then continually to live in a state of self-evaluation. Continually evaluate your attitudes, your actions, and be responsible for how you responded. Is what I'm doing helping or hurting? How's it helping? How's it hurting? What can I do to improve my communication skills? How can I develop empathy? Kind of looking at yourself, and we really know ourselves when we get honest with ourselves. You know, do I push people away rather than draw them in? How am I being a jerk? How am I maturing and overcoming? And we realize that some of our greatest lessons learned are those that we missed the first time. And so if we can begin to realize that, and so that I won't do it again. And I know in Dr. Glasser's Shadows of the Stations of the Mind, and he has the 10 stations, and one of them is seeing the error and then correcting the error. Seeing the error and then correcting the error. And when we do that, I don't remember which one is like the 5th or the 6th step, but then we can continue to climb where we get all the way up to consciousness, which is just a really deep understanding.
I like that. Oh, go ahead. I'm just saying, I like that last statement you have there. Life is faithful to give us the test over and over until we pass the test or move on.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And if we realize that, I think it makes it better for us.
And when we do move on, to literally move on. Yeah, not drag it with us. So that brings us to the end of this. And I thank each of you for being here, and realize that life is too long to carry those things and not make amends. It's also too short. So we want to live in grace and forgiveness, and in not only the giving it, but also in the receiving it. So thank you for being here, and have a blessed rest of the day and good mental health.